Millions of Americans between 45 and 65 are watching retirement close in, while their savings balance sits nowhere near where it needs to be. And the Federal Reserve's own data tells you exactly how bad it is. The median retirement savings for someone aged 55 to 64 in this country runs about $185,000, and that number hasn't moved the way it should have. If your balance lands somewhere around there or below it, the instinct is to spiral. But what this video lays out is a strategy, a genuinely uncomplicated one, that builds a path to $500,000 and explains precisely what that number can do for your retirement once you get there. Start with the number itself, because $500,000 reads as either impossibly out of reach or frustratingly modest, depending on your situation. And both reactions miss the point. The framework that makes $500,000 workable comes from an actual academic study called the Trinity Study, published in 1998 by 3 professors at Trinity University. And what they found was that retirees pulling 4% of their portfolio annually carry a high statistical probability of their money lasting 30 years or longer. Under that framework, a $500,000 portfolio generates $20,000 per year in withdrawals. And that is before Social Security enters the picture. The average Social Security benefit as of January 2025 sits at roughly $1,907 per month, which adds up to $22,884 per year. And when you layer those two income streams together, a single retiree lands at approximately $42,884 annually. That is in a lavish lifestyle, but in a moderate cost of living area for someone with manageable expenses. And no mortgage, it represents a real and functional retirement. Now, $500,000 does work as a finish line for everyone, and that point deserves a direct acknowledgement. Fidelity's benchmark recommends 10 times your final salary saved by retirement, which puts a $60,000 earner at a $600,000 target. But $500,000 functions as a concrete, reachable milestone for most people, especially once they understand the mechanics behind building it. Before the strategy makes sense, the accounts need to make sense, because parking your money in the wrong container quietly costs you a shocking amount over time. The two accounts that matter most for most people are the 401k and the IRA, and the 2025 contribution limits reflect some meaningful changes. A 401k now accepts up to $23,500 per year from employees, and anyone age 50 or older can throw in an additional $7,500 as a catch-up contribution on top of that. What many people in the 60 to negative 63 age range haven't fully absorbed yet is that the Secure 2.0 Act, signed into law in December 2022, bumped that specific catch-up contribution to $11,250 for that age group alone. For an IRA, the ceiling sits at $7,000 annually, with a $1,000 catch up for those 50 and older. The employer match tends to get treated as an afterthought, and that is a costly habit. Vanguard's How America Saves 2024 report puts the average employer 401k match at approximately 4.5% of salary, and close to 49% of employers structure that as a dollar for dollar match, up to a certain percentage. Leaving that match uncaptured means leaving money on the table. That compounds for years into a number that eventually stings to think about. One account that consistently flies under the radar is the health savings account, and financial planners tend to call it the triple tax advantage account for good reason. Contributions go in pre-tax, the growth runs tax-free, and withdrawals for qualified medical expenses come out tax-free as well. After age 65, it shifts into something that functions nearly identically to a traditional IRA for non-medical withdrawals. A growing number of planners recommend maxing the HSA before maxing a Roth IRA, and for people in this age range with rising healthcare costs on the horizon, that sequence makes a lot of sense, working from a 7% average annual return, which reflects the S&P 500's historical performance after adjusting for inflation. The math on consistent monthly investing produces some numbers worth sitting with. Investing $500 per month reaches approximately $500,000 in around 28 years. $750 per month gets there in roughly 23 years. And $1,000 per month crosses that line in about 20 years. Those timelines lengthen when you are starting from zero at 50. But the picture shifts considerably when you already carry a balance. The rule of 72 reframes this entire conversation. For anyone with meaningful savings already built up, divide 72 by your annual return rate, and the result tells you how many years it takes to double your money. And at 7% returns, that calculation lands at roughly 10.3 years. Someone sitting at $250,000 today at age 55, who simply stays invested. Without adding, another dollar arrives at approximately $500,000 by age 65. Through compounding alone. That is not an argument for stopping contributions, but it shows how powerfully an existing balance works on your behalf. Once it reaches a certain size, the math carries no opinion about past decisions, and it doesn't penalize regret. It only responds to what happens from today forward, which is the only part anyone can actually control. Here is where a single number can save someone from one of the most expensive decisions. In personal finance, over 15-year periods, approximately 88% of actively managed large cap funds underperform the S&P 500, and that figure comes from the Spiver US scorecard, published in 2023. Those underperforming funds charge more for the privilege of trailing the index, with average expense ratios running around 0.66%, compared to 0.05% to 0.20% for index funds. Vanguard S&P 500 index fund charges just 0.04%. A fraction of a percent sounds harmless, but over 30 years a 1% difference in fees eats roughly 25 to 28% of a portfolio's final value. And on a $500,000 balance, that translates to somewhere between $125,000 and $140,000 gone, not to market volatility, but to fees. John Bogle, who founded Vanguard and built the case for index fund investing, for everyday people, captured the philosophy cleanly. Don't look for the needle in the haystack, just buy the haystack. Decades of market data have continued to validate that framing. The strategy itself reduces to this: contribute consistently to tax-advantaged accounts, capture every dollar of the employer match, and put the money into low-cost, broad market index funds. No stock picking, no market timing, no expensive fund manager collecting fees on returns. They probably won't beat anyway. For people who want even less friction involved. Target date funds have absorbed approximately 60% of new 401k contributions as of 2023, according to Investment Company Institute data, because the simplicity of picking one fund tied to your retirement year and leaving it alone removes a decision that many people handle badly when left to make it repeatedly. The strategy is simple, and that fact makes the next part harder to hear. Dalbar's quantitative analysis of investor behavior from 2023 found that the average equity fund investor earns roughly 5 to 6% annually, while the market itself has returned approximately 10%. And that 4 to 5% gap doesn't come from poor stock selection. It comes from selling during downturns and buying back in too late. From watching a balance drop and deciding the bottom is a better time to exit than to hold. Warren Buffett described the stock market as a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient. And the Dalbar data puts a real number on what that transfer costs. The 2008 financial crisis made this behavioral pattern visible on a massive scale, with many investors watching 30 to 40% declines in their 401k balances and exiting the market entirely. The ones who kept automatic contributions running through the downturn captured the entire recovery that followed, while the ones who sold locked in losses and then bought back at higher prices on the way up. The S&P 500 has recovered from every major downturn in its history, and staying invested through those periods has consistently separated the people who reached their retirement numbers from the ones who didn't. Automatic enrollment data from Vanguard's 2024 report makes the behavioral case even more directly. When employers automatically enroll workers in 401k, rather than asking them to opt in, participation rates climb from around 60% to over 90%, and the lesson transfers directly to personal strategy. Automate contributions, set the amount, and remove the ongoing decision from a brain that will absolutely find reasons to pause or redirect that money when markets get uncomfortable. For anyone 50 or older, the catch-up contribution rules exist. specifically for this season of life, and using them fully makes a measurable difference. A 401k at $23,500 plus the $7,500 catch outputs $31,000 per year into a tax-advantaged account. And if the employer matches any portion of that, the effective annual contribution climbs higher still. People aged 60 to 63 carry the additional advantage of the secure 2.0 enhanced catch, up at $11,250, a change that took effect in 2025 and that many eligible participants haven't yet built into their planning. Capturing the full employer match comes before everything else, because that match delivers an immediate 50 to 100% return on contributions, depending on how the employer structures it. And no investment approach competes with that kind of guaranteed return in year one. From there, reviewing fund expense ratios inside an existing 401k takes about 10 minutes and can recover tens of thousands of dollars over a decade simply by switching from high-fee funds to lower-cost index alternatives that most large plans already offer. Fidelity's guidance anchors the savings rate conversation at 15% of pre-tax income annually, including employer contributions. And for people who don't land there today, the path forward runs through incremental increases rather than dramatic overhauls. Raising contributions by 1% per year lets the adjustment absorb into a paycheck gradually. And over 10 years, that sequence builds a savings rate that looks very different from where it started, with far less disruption than a single large change would require. Reaching $500,000 is a mystery, and it doesn't require sophistication. It requires consistent contributions going into tax-advantaged accounts, employer match captured completely, low-cost index funds doing the compounding work, and enough patience to leave the money alone when markets make staying uncomfortable. The 401k has existed since 1978. The IRA dates back to 1974. The data on index funds outperforming active management over 15-year periods runs to 88% of funds in the SPIVA scorecard. None of this is new information, and yet the median balance for Americans aged 55 to 64 still sits at $185,000. What separates the people who hit the number from the people who don't rarely comes down to access to better information. It comes down to starting, continuing, and staying invested when the temptation to do something else feels loudest. For anyone sitting between 45 and 65 right now, with retirement visible on the timeline in a way it wasn't a decade ago, the math is knowable, the accounts are accessible, and the approach is genuinely as simple as the name of this video suggests. Run your own numbers using what is here, close the fee gap, automate what you can, and let the compounding do the rest. The strategy works. The only question is whether you'll stay out of its way long enough to let it.